My daughter-in-law tore my $50,000 check into 4 pieces and dropped them into her unfinished soup. This is insulting, Vanessa said. Miles is your only son. The dining room became quiet, not completely. A waiter was still placing water glasses at the next table, and somewhere behind the kitchen doors, a tray struck a metal counter, but at our table, no one moved. One corner of the check floated on the surface of the soup. My signature disappeared beneath a streak of cream. I looked at my son. Miles did not apologize. He did not reach for the pieces. He did not tell his wife that $50,000 was more money than many families earned in a year. He only leaned back in his chair and said, "She's right, Dad. 50,000 doesn't fix anything." It had not been intended to fix everything. It was not a loan. There was no interest, no demand for shares in their company, and no repayment schedule. I had written the check because Carver Home Concepts was behind with suppliers, and Miles had admitted he was struggling to cover payroll. I gave him one condition. Use the money to pay the people his company already owed, and do not borrow again against family property. Apparently, $50,000 with no obligation attached was beneath them. Vanessa opened the leather folder beside her plate and pushed a document toward Miles. "Then stop waiting for whatever he decides to leave you," she said. "Sign the release and make him give you your inheritance now." She said the word inheritance while I was sitting 3 feet away, alive, healthy enough to hear it. Old enough, apparently, to be treated as a delay in the transfer process. Miles looked down at the first page. The title read, Advance Family Distribution and Estate Releases Agreement. Vanessa had prepared it before the dinner. This was not an argument that had become impulsive. The check was only the thing she chose to tear when the performance began. "What exactly are you asking for?" I said. Vanessa turned another document toward me. An appraisal, on the first page. In letters large enough to admire from across the table were the words, Projected Completed Value, $4.2 million. The number had been circled in red. Harbor Ridge, she said. The real inheritance. Harbor Ridge Redevelopment, LLC, owned a group of old warehouses near a new freight route outside the city. I had purchased the property 4 years earlier through Carver Industrial Properties. The plan was to convert it into smaller logistics units, commercial workshops, and office space for regional service companies. It was a difficult project, not a worthless one. But difficult assets are not made simple by printing their future value in large type. Vanessa tapped the circled number. You're sitting on a $4.2 million property while your son is struggling to keep his company alive. I turned the appraisal slightly. Below the figure was another sentence. The print was smaller, though not hidden. Completion subject to outstanding project obligations, required capital contribution, final construction, and stabilized occupancy. Vanessa had not circled that. Nor had she opened the document to page 37. My late wife, Ruth, would have noticed the difference before finishing the first paragraph. Ruth was the first bookkeeper at Carver Industrial Properties. When we began, the company operated from a rented warehouse office with one telephone and a heater that worked only when the weather was already warm. I used to come home excited because we had signed a large contract. Ruth would ask 3 questions. How much did it cost us to earn that revenue? When would we actually receive the money? And what did we still owe before any of it belonged to us? She kept a green ledger beside our bed during the early years. On the inside cover she had written, Gross tells the story, net tells the truth. I had repeated that sentence to Miles when he was 16 and asked why a company reporting $10 million in sales could still fail. He had understood it then, or at least he had passed the test. That evening, he looked only at the red circle. How much is Harbor Ridge worth right now? I asked Vanessa. $4.2 million. That is not what I asked. She folded her arms. It will be worth $4.2 million when it's finished. How much is it worth now? Miles looked at me. You're doing that thing where you make every opportunity sound dangerous. Every opportunity is dangerous to someone who has already spent the money before understanding it. I did not say that. Instead, I looked at the document in front of him. You want an advance distribution? Yes, Vanessa said. I asked Miles. My son hesitated, then he nodded. Yes, in exchange, you would release any right to demand an additional share of my estate later. Vanessa answered again. That's fair if Harbor Ridge is transferred properly. I kept my eyes on Miles. You understand this would replace the inheritance you believe you are owed. He looked toward the appraisal. If the property is worth what the report says, yes, there it was, not what Harbor Ridge was. What he wanted the largest number to mean. I had been rescuing Miles from numbers for most of his adult life. His first business loan had come due before a client paid. I covered it. A tax dispute froze one of his accounts. I advanced payroll. When a remodeling project went 30% over budget, I bought the company's equipment from the lender and leased it back to him at almost nothing. Each time, Miles promised he had learned. Each time, I accepted the promise because correcting the problem was faster than watching my son endure the consequences. I told myself I was protecting his employees, protecting Chloe. Protecting the company he had worked hard to build. The truth was less flattering. I did not like watching him fail, so I kept moving his deficits into my column. Carver Home Concepts now owed approximately $310,000 to suppliers. 3 renovation projects had exceeded their budgets. Their credit line was nearly exhausted. I knew some of it. I did not yet know all of it. The $50,000 was supposed to be the final bridge, a gift with one boundary. Vanessa had torn up the gift because it did not look large enough beside an appraisal headline. I reached into her soup and removed the 4 wet pieces of the check. Vanessa stared at me. I placed them on my napkin. Then I folded the napkin and slipped it into an empty envelope from my coat pocket. She gave a short laugh. You're keeping that? Yes. For what? To remember the choice clearly. Miles rubbed a hand over his face. Dad, we're not trying to disrespect you. Your wife put my check in her soup. She's frustrated. Are you? He did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. Vanessa leaned toward me. We don't want another allowance. We want the asset that should already belong to us. Nothing I own already belongs to you. Her face hardened. You built all of this for your family. I built it with Ruth. I maintained it with employees, lenders, contractors, and 40 years of decisions. Family does not erase ownership. Miles looked embarrassed, but not enough to stop her. What are the options? He asked. I rested my hand on the appraisal. There are 2. Vanessa sat straighter. You may accept the $50,000 under the condition I already gave you. I will issue a replacement after you provide the supplier schedule. Her eyes moved toward the envelope containing the torn check. Or, you may request Harbor Ridge as an advance distribution. Vanessa smiled. But not both, I continued. The smile remained. She believed she had already won. I explained that the transfer would not happen at dinner. There would be complete financial disclosure. The current value would be separated from the projected value. Every debt, payable, assessment, reserve requirement, and capital obligation would be listed. Miles and Vanessa would have independent legal counsel. The lender would need to approve the change in control. There would be a 72-hour period after they received the final documents. Vanessa's expression changed. That sounds like a delay tactic. It is a comprehension tactic. We know what we're choosing. You know the number you circled. Miles pushed the appraisal back toward me. Is Harbor Ridge valuable or not? Yes. Then why are you trying to scare us away from it? Because valuable is not the same as free. Vanessa turned to Miles. He always does this. He makes everything sound complicated, so we'll accept whatever small amount he decides we deserve. I waited for my son to disagree. He did not. Instead, he said, we want Harbor Ridge. I gave him one final opportunity. Do you want time to reconsider the $50,000? No, Vanessa answered first, but Miles followed. No, Dad. We want the property. I nodded. Then I will ask Helen Brooks to prepare the disclosures. Vanessa picked up the leather folder, and you'll transfer it. If you still choose it after reading everything, we will. She said it with the confidence of someone accepting a prize. Dinner ended 20 minutes later. Chloe had been sitting at the far end of the table through most of the conversation. My granddaughter was 19 and studying business analytics. She had not defended me, but I did not expect her to challenge both parents in a restaurant. As we stood, she glanced toward the envelope in my hand. "Grandpa," she said quietly, "was that check for Dad's company?" "Yes." "Is my education account connected to any of this?" Vanessa turned. "Chloe, this is not your concern. The fact that my granddaughter had asked made it my concern." "No," I told her, "and it will remain separate." Miles frowned. "We would never touch Chloe's education fund." I looked at him. A month earlier, I would have believed the sentence without checking. That night, I drove home and opened Ruth's green ledger. The pages smelled faintly of dust and old paper. I turned to the inside cover. Gross tells the story. Net tells the truth. Then I opened the current Harbor Ridge file. The projected completed value was on page 1. The present as-is value was approximately $1,750,000. The senior construction loan was $1,680,000. Contractors were owed $510,000. The municipal infrastructure assessment was $360,000. The completion reserve was short by $295,000. Total project obligations exceeded $2,840,000. And in 21 days, Harbor Ridge's owner would be required to contribute another $420,000 to prevent the lender from declaring a default. I did not smile. There was nothing amusing about watching a son walk toward a consequence his father had postponed for 20 years. The number Vanessa had circled was on page 1. The number that mattered began on page 37. Page 37 did not contain a trap. It contained a schedule. 4 columns. Creditor amount, due date, obligation. The numbers were printed in the same typeface as everything else. No smaller font. No hidden appendix. No vague phrase designed to make debt look harmless. $1,680,000 owed under the senior construction loan. $510,000 owed to contractors and suppliers. $360,000 in municipal infrastructure assessments. $295,000 missing from the completion reserve. And beneath the schedule, in bold, mandatory capital conversion. $420,000 within 21 days of change of control. Vanessa had asked for the asset with the largest number. Harbor Ridge had given her several. Helen Brooks arrived at my office the following morning. She had handled my business and estate matters for almost 18 years. Ruth trusted her because Helen had a habit of reading the least exciting page first. I handed her the estate release agreement Vanessa had brought to dinner. Helen read the title, then looked at me over her glasses. "Did you ask for this?" "No." "Did Miles?" "His wife prepared it." That was not my question. I understood why she asked. Miles was 45 years old. Whatever influence Vanessa had over him, his signature would still belong to him. "He agreed," I said. Helen turned through the document. "This draft would not accomplish everything they think it does. It is incomplete, and several provisions would invite a dispute later. Can you prepare one that will hold?" She closed the folder. "I can prepare a lawful advance distribution agreement. Before I do, tell me why." I opened Ruth's green ledger and placed it beside the Harbor Ridge appraisal. Vanessa tore up $50,000 because she wants the property. Helen looked at the figures. Does she understand the liabilities? She understands $4.2 million. That is not the same thing. I know. Helen studied me for several seconds. Are you transferring this because you want them to fail? No. Do you believe they can manage it? With sufficient capital, discipline, and advice, Harbor Ridge can still become valuable. Do they have the capital? No. Then this is dangerous. Yes, she leaned back. Edwin, a complete disclosure will protect the transaction. It will not make it kind. The words landed where she intended them to. I had spent the night telling myself I was merely allowing Miles to choose, but a father can speak the truth and still use it as a weapon. I needed to know which one I was doing. I offered him cash without debt, I said. He refused it. He asked for Harbor Ridge. You can still refuse. I can. Why don't you? I looked at the old ledger. Because every time his life showed a deficit, I moved it into my column. Helen's expression softened, though her voice did not. And now I want him to own the whole number. Not only the appraisal. Not only the future value, the loan, the invoices, the deadlines, the risk. Helen nodded once. Then there will be no shortcuts. She listed the conditions. A full debt schedule. An independent valuation, separating current value from projected completed value. Written lender consent. A transfer of the LLC membership interest rather than a fictional handover of isolated property. An assumption agreement signed by Miles, a clear estate release supported by consideration. Independent counsel, and 72 hours between final disclosure and signing. I will also read every material term aloud at closing, she said. Good. And if Miles's lawyer tells him not to sign, then he should listen. Helen began preparing the documents. I paid the initial fee for Miles and Vanessa to consult Peter Lang, an attorney with no connection to my company. Vanessa objected as soon as she learned. We can choose our own lawyer. You can, I told her. Peter is an option, not a requirement. I am covering the first review so you cannot later say you lacked advice. We don't need someone your lawyer selected. Then hire someone else. Miles agreed to meet Peter. 3 days later, Peter called Helen with permission to include all parties in a video conference. Vanessa joined from the office of Carver Home Concepts. Behind her, I could see framed photographs of completed renovations and a shelf filled with awards. Miles sat beside her. Peter appeared from a separate window. He began with the appraisal. Harbor Ridge's projected completed value is $4.2 million, he said. That figure assumes construction is completed, the municipal work is paid, the reserve is funded, and occupancy reaches the stated level. Vanessa nodded impatiently. We know. The current as-is valuation is approximately $1.75 million, but the development is unfinished. Yes, that is why the completed value is a projection. Peter shared the debt schedule. The LLC has obligations totaling approximately $2.845 million. Vanessa interrupted. Those debts belong to the project. Correct, so they are not personal debts. They are obligations of the company you are proposing to own. She turned to Miles. Exactly. The property pays for itself. Peter continued, only if it is completed, leased, and operated successfully. The immediate problem is liquidity. He highlighted the capital notice. $420,000 must be contributed within 21 days after the transfer. If that does not occur, the lender may suspend additional funding, charge default interest, exercise remedies against project assets, or require a restructuring. Miles looked at me through the screen. Did you already plan to pay that? I had financing options. That isn't what I asked. No. I will not fund the capital contribution after transferring the company. Vanessa laughed once. So you're handing us a project and stripping out the money needed to finish it. The required capital is disclosed as part of the project. You have the money. Yes, and you're choosing not to include it. You asked for Harbor Ridge, not $420,000 in cash plus Harbor Ridge. She looked at Peter. Is that legal? Peter did not react to the tone. Yes, provided the transfer is fully disclosed and voluntarily accepted. My concern is not legality. My concern is whether you have a credible source of funds, Miles said. We can refinance. Peter shook his head. Do not assume that. Carver Home Concepts is already highly leveraged. Harbor Ridge cannot simply be presented as a $4.2 million unencumbered asset because it is neither completed nor unencumbered. Vanessa folded her arms. We have investors. Have they committed funds in writing? They will once they see we control the property. Then I advise you to obtain those commitments before signing. She looked at Miles. Your father is trying to scare you out of what's yours. Peter spoke before I could. Mr. Carver is disclosing the risk. I am advising you independently that Harbor Ridge requires substantial liquidity. If you cannot fund the capital call, I recommend that you do not accept the transfer. Miles remained silent. Peter turned directly toward him. This decision belongs to you, not your father and not your wife. Do you understand that? Yes. Do you have $420,000 available? Not today. Do you have a binding commitment from someone who does? No. Then my written advice will be not to sign unless that changes. Vanessa removed herself from the call 10 minutes later. She said she had another meeting. Miles remained. For a moment, he looked less certain. Is Harbor Ridge going to fail? He asked me. I don't know. You're the one who developed it. I know the risks. I do not know the future. If you kept it, could you cover the capital call? Yes. So it works for you, but not for me. It works for someone who has the cash to carry it through uncertainty. He stared at the schedule. What happens if I don't take it? I replace the $50,000 check. With the same condition? Yes, pay the suppliers. Stop borrowing against family assets, and the estate remains mine to plan. He rubbed his forehead. Vanessa already told 2 investors we were receiving Harbor Ridge. That was premature. She thinks it changes how they see our company. It probably does. He looked up. She's not wrong that $50,000 doesn't solve the whole problem. No, that surprised him. I continued. $50,000 was not meant to solve your whole problem. It was meant to pay people you already owed while you reduced costs and stopped adding debt. We could lose projects. You may. We could lose the company. You may. He looked at me with the expression he had worn at 31 when his first loan came due, waiting for the sentence that always followed. I'll take care of it. I did not say it. Instead, I said, take the cash or take Harbor Ridge. Do not take the project because you believe I will fund it after you sign. He was quiet for a long time. I need to talk to Vanessa. Good. The 72-hour cooling-off period began after Peter delivered his written advice. He used clear language. Harbor Ridge was materially leveraged. The projected value was conditional. The capital requirement was immediate. Miles and Vanessa lacked confirmed liquidity. He recommended they decline the transfer unless they secured adequate funding first. Vanessa called me that evening. Peter treats us like children. He advised you like clients. He doesn't understand the investors we know. Then obtain their commitments. We can't get commitments until we own the asset. Then you do not have funding. She changed direction. You don't want Miles to have anything substantial while you're alive. I offered him $50,000. You offered him an allowance. I offered cash without an obligation attached. What you offered was a reminder that you control everything. The anger in her voice was genuine. Vanessa did not think she was stealing. She believed ownership should already have moved toward her husband because he was my son. To her, my continued control was the offense. We want Harbor Ridge, she said. Miles must say that himself. He will. The following morning, Miles came to my office alone. Ruth's green ledger lay open on the desk between us. I placed a new checkbook beside it. I can write another $50,000 check now, I said. The transfer stops. There is no penalty for changing your mind. He looked at the checkbook, then at the Harbor Ridge file. Vanessa thinks you're testing whether I have the courage to take over something important. I am not. She says you make every asset sound dangerous, so no one else can control it. Peter said the same things I did. She thinks Peter is protecting you. Peter represents you. Miles looked toward the window. We want Harbor Ridge. I want it. Do you understand the debts? Yes. The current value? Yes. The capital call? Yes. The estate release? His jaw tightened. Yes. You understand I will not pay the $420,000 after transfer. Yes, say it clearly. He looked at me. I understand. I closed the checkbook. Then Helen will proceed. Before the closing, I made changes to the rest of my estate. Miles was removed as executor, not as punishment for choosing Harbor Ridge, but because a man trying to turn an inheritance into emergency collateral should not control the distribution of everything else. Chloe's education trust was transferred to an independent trustee. Her parents could not borrow against it, redirect it, or call it temporary family liquidity. Any future benefit for Miles would be held through a discretionary trust with independent management. He would not be able to pledge it to another lender. Vanessa learned about none of those changes before the closing. They did not affect the Harbor Ridge transaction, they affected what remained mine. On the final day of the cooling-off period, Vanessa emailed invitations to family members, business contacts, 2 potential investors, and several of Miles's clients. The heading read, "The Carver Legacy Luncheon" below it. Join us as Edwin Carver transfers the family's $4.2 million Harbor Ridge legacy to its next generation. She reserved a private room at the Northfield Club. She ordered a backdrop. She invited people to watch Miles receive what she called his rightful place. Helen forwarded the invitation to me with one question: "Did you authorize this?" I wrote back, "No." Then I opened Ruth's ledger. Vanessa had invited everyone to admire the gross number. Vanessa had printed the words "The Next Generation of Carver Legacy" across a backdrop behind the signing table. Gold letters on dark blue fabric. Below them was a rendering of Harbor Ridge after completion. Clean brick buildings, new glass entrances, delivery vehicles lined neatly beside landscaped walkways, no unfinished concrete, no contractor invoices, no lender notices, no page 37. The private room at the Northfield Club held nearly 40 people. Relatives, business contacts, 2 investors Vanessa had been courting, several clients of Carver Home Concepts, Janice Cole, the longtime controller of my company, sat near the end of the signing table with the final debt schedule. Owen Park represented the Harbor Ridge lender. Helen Brooks had the transfer documents arranged in front of her. Peter Lang sat beside Miles. Vanessa had placed Ruth's green ledger in front of my chair, as if it were a family decoration. She had found it in my office during an earlier visit and assumed it would make the event look sentimental. She did not know what Ruth had written inside. Vanessa greeted guests near the entrance. She wore a cream suit and spoke loudly enough for nearby conversations to stop. Today is about Edwin finally recognizing what Miles has earned as his only son. Earned? I watched Miles when she said it. He adjusted his tie and looked toward the rendering. He did not correct her. Chloe stood near the back of the room. She had not wanted to attend, but her mother called it a family milestone. When our eyes met, I nodded once. She did not need to choose a side. She only needed to know I had seen her. Vanessa called everyone to their seats. Then she stood behind Miles and rested both hands on his shoulders. For years, Miles has worked to continue the Carver name, she began. Today, Edwin is transferring Harbor Ridge, a property valued at $4.2 million, to the next generation. Several people applauded. One of the investors lifted his phone and took a photograph of the rendering. Helen waited until the room quieted. Before any signatures are placed, she said, "I need to correct one point." Vanessa's smile tightened. Helen continued, $4.2 million is the projected completed value. It is not the current market value, and it is not the net equity being transferred. The investor lowered his phone. Vanessa gave a small laugh. Of course, every project has operating details. These are not operating details, Helen said. They are material terms. She opened the valuation. The current as-is value is approximately $1,750,000. Someone at the second table whispered. Vanessa leaned toward Helen. Can we not turn this into an accounting seminar? No, Helen said. Not if the purpose is to sign the transfer today. She looked directly at Miles. You have received these disclosures in writing and had more than 72 hours to review them with independent counsel. I will summarize them again for the record. Miles nodded. Helen read the obligations one at a time. Senior construction loan, $1,680,000. Janice placed the corresponding schedule in front of Miles. Contractor and supplier payables, approximately $510,000. Vanessa shifted behind him. Municipal infrastructure assessment, $360,000. One of Vanessa's invited investors turned toward the other. Completion reserve deficiency, $295,000. Helen paused. Total current project obligations, approximately $2,845,000. The applause had disappeared. Vanessa stepped forward. Those are project debts, not ours. Owen Park spoke for the first time. After the transfer, the project is yours. She looked at him. The property pays those debts. The property may generate enough value to satisfy them after completion and stabilized occupancy, Owen said. It does not currently produce sufficient cash flow to do so, but the lender approved the transfer. The lender agreed to a change of control subject to the signed assumption agreement, continued compliance, and the required capital contribution. Miles looked toward Peter. Peter had warned him about every sentence being spoken. Still, he opened his copy. What exactly are we assuming personally? Owen answered carefully. The obligations remain principally within Harbor Ridge LLC. However, you are taking ownership of an entity whose assets are pledged to the lender. You are also signing the negotiated support provisions listed in the assumption agreement. If the project defaults, the lender may exercise remedies against the project and any additional interests covered by those provisions. Vanessa folded her arms. So Edwin walks away and leaves us responsible for finishing what he started. I answered her. You demanded ownership before I completed it. We demanded the value. The obligations create the value. Helen turned to Miles. Your counsel has advised you that Harbor Ridge is materially leveraged and requires substantial liquidity. Do you want to stop the signing? The room waited. Miles looked first at Vanessa. She bent toward him. Your father is trying to scare you out of what's yours. Peter spoke before Miles could answer. I am not Mr. Carver's attorney. I represent you. My written recommendation remains that you should not sign without secured funding for the capital requirement. Vanessa stared at him. We have investors in this room. One of the men she had invited looked uncomfortable. We came to hear the proposal, he said. We haven't committed capital. Vanessa's expression flickered, only briefly. Then she returned her attention to Miles. Once the property is yours, everything changes. Peter placed one hand on the documents. Miles, I need an answer from you without anyone else speaking. Do you understand that the projected $4.2 million value is conditional? Yes. Do you understand that the current as-is value is lower than the obligations presently carried by the LLC? Yes. Do you understand that ownership does not cause the existing debt to disappear? Yes. Do you currently have $420,000 available for the required capital contribution? No. Do you have a binding commitment from another source? Miles looked toward the investors. Neither man moved. No. Do you understand that the lender may declare a default or require restructuring if the contribution is not made? Miles swallowed. Yes. Peter's voice remained neutral. Do you still wish to proceed? Vanessa whispered his name. Miles did not look at her this time. He looked at me. I knew the question behind his expression. If this goes wrong, will you really let it happen? For most of his life, the answer had been no. That day, I gave him no promise. He turned back to Peter. I understand. Helen moved to the next document. The Advance Distribution and Estate Release Agreement provides that Harbor Ridge constitutes Miles Carver's present family distribution. In exchange, Miles releases any right to bring a future claim demanding an additional share of Edwin Carver's estate. Vanessa interrupted. That doesn't affect Chloe. No, Helen said. Chloe's education trust and any independent provision Edwin may choose to make for her are separate. And Edwin can still leave something to Miles later. He may choose to establish a discretionary benefit. Miles is not guaranteed any further distribution and may not bring a claim based on expectations of inheritance. Vanessa looked down at Miles. Harbor Ridge is worth more than whatever would be left later. Helen did not respond. She placed the signature page in front of Miles. This is your final opportunity to postpone or decline. Miles picked up the pen. For a second, I remembered him at 9 years old, sitting at our kitchen table while Ruth taught him to balance 2 columns. He had become angry because the totals did not match. Ruth had told him not to change the answer, just because he preferred a different one. He signed, first, the membership interest transfer, then the assumption agreement, then the lender acknowledgement, then the estate release. Each signature appeared quickly, no pause, no question. Vanessa signed where required, then Helen placed the transfer instrument in front of me. I opened Ruth's ledger. Gross tells the story. Net tells the truth. I signed Harbor Ridge over to my son. Helen confirmed the documents had been executed. Owen signed the lender's consent. Vanessa exhaled and turned toward the guests. There, she said. The next generation officially owns Harbor Ridge. A few people applauded uncertainly. One investor approached Miles and shook his hand. The other remained seated, reading the debt summary. Janice waited until the congratulations ended. Then she placed a sealed envelope in front of Miles. Harbor Ridge's control has changed, she said. This notice is now addressed to the new owner. Vanessa reached for it first. She opened the envelope and removed a single page. The heading was printed in bold, Mandatory Capital Conversion, $420,000 due in 21 days. She read the number, then read it again. What account is this being transferred from? Janice looked at her. That is for the new owner to determine. Vanessa turned to me. Which of your accounts was supposed to fund this? None. You said you had financing options. I did, then use one. They were options available while I owned and managed the project. Her voice rose. You cannot hand over an unfinished asset and remove the money required to finish it. I transferred exactly what you requested. You knew we didn't have $420,000. Yes. A relative near the doorway stepped away as if preparing to leave. Vanessa lowered her voice, but everyone could still hear her. Then you knew this would happen. I knew you had been told it could happen. Miles finally spoke. Dad, we need time. You have 21 days. That is not what I meant. I reached into my jacket and removed the envelope I had carried since his birthday dinner. The paper inside had dried stiff and wrinkled. I placed the 4 pieces of the $50,000 check on the table. The torn signature faced upward. Vanessa stared at them. I said, You tore up the only money I offered without an obligation attached. Her cheeks reddened. 50,000 would not cover this. No. Then why bring it? Because it was 50,000 more than you have now. No one applauded after that. The investors left without scheduling another meeting. The relatives found reasons to move toward the door. Vanessa had created a room for everyone to admire what she believed was a $4.2 million inheritance. Instead, they had heard her husband accept a company carrying nearly $2.85 million in obligations and an immediate demand for capital he did not possess. I did not feel victorious. Ruth would not have. A balance sheet does not celebrate when the numbers finally agree. It only tells the truth. 2 days later, Vanessa called me at 7 in the morning. She did not say hello. The bank says we owe $420,000 by Friday. Fix it. The deadline is 21 days. They want proof of funds by Friday. That is different. Edwin, stop doing this. You know what I mean? Yes, then fix it. I looked at Ruth's ledger on the desk. You asked me to stop treating Miles like a child. There was silence on the line. I have. The investors did not return Vanessa's calls. One sent a short email saying Harbor Ridge did not fit his current risk profile. The other requested additional financial statements, reviewed them, and declined without explanation. Vanessa called that cowardice. It was not. The presentation at the luncheon had promised control of a $4.2 million asset. The documents showed ownership of an unfinished project whose current obligations exceeded its present value. Investors do not become dishonest simply because they read the pages a promoter hoped they would ignore. Carver Home Concepts could not provide the capital either. Its credit line was nearly exhausted. Suppliers had begun requiring deposits before delivering materials. 2 clients were withholding final payments because projects remained incomplete. Miles approached 3 lenders. The first rejected the application after reviewing Harbor Ridge's existing loan. The second offered financing at a rate that would have consumed nearly every remaining dollar of projected profit. The third wanted additional personal collateral. Miles and Vanessa's house already secured part of their business debt. There was nowhere left to move the risk except back toward me. They came to my home 6 days after the luncheon. Vanessa carried the Harbor Ridge file. Miles carried nothing. I placed Ruth's green ledger on the dining table before they sat down. Vanessa did not remove her coat. "We have a solution," she said. I waited. "You take Harbor Ridge back temporarily." "No, you haven't heard the terms." "I heard the first one." Miles leaned forward. "Dad, we're not asking you to erase everything. You take back the membership interest, cover the capital contribution, and stabilize the project. Once it's leased, ownership transfers to us again." Vanessa added, "We'll reimburse you from the refinancing." "You have no refinancing." "We will after the project is stabilized with my money. As an investment." "No," she opened the file, "then loan Harbor Ridge the $420,000. The company can repay you." "The company already owes more than its current value. The completed value is $4.2 million. I opened Ruth's ledger. Gross tells the story. Vanessa looked at the book as though the sentence had become an insult. "We know what Ruth used to say. Then finish it." Neither of them did. I said, "Net tells the truth." Miles rubbed both hands over his face. "We made a mistake." It was the first time he had said it. I looked at him. "What was the mistake?" "Taking Harbor Ridge." "No." Vanessa gave an impatient sigh. "What answer do you want?" "The truth." Miles looked toward the window. "The mistake was assuming the investors would come in after the transfer." "That was one mistake. And assuming we could refinance." "Another." He grew frustrated. "Dad, what difference does the wording make? We are telling you the project is going to fail. It may. And you can prevent that. I may be able to. Then why won't you?" I turned the Harbor Ridge disclosure toward him. The completed value was listed at the top. Below it were the current value, liabilities, reserve deficiency, and capital requirement. Next to each material term was Miles's initial. At the bottom was his signature, confirming that he had reviewed the risks with independent counsel. "Which number did I hide?" I asked. He said nothing. I pointed to the current value. "Was this hidden?" "No." "The senior loan?" "No." "The contractor obligations?" "No." "The capital requirement?" "No." "Peter's recommendation that you not sign without secured funding?" "No." "Then what did I hide?" Miles's voice dropped. "You knew Vanessa would push me." Vanessa turned toward him. "Miles." He kept looking at me. "You knew she had already told people we were getting the property. You knew how much pressure I was under. And you knew she tore up $50,000 I had earned to help you. She shouldn't have done that. You let her. I was angry. You agreed with her. Because $50,000 didn't fix the company. It was never supposed to. I had explained that before. At dinner, in my office during the legal review. But Miles had heard 50,000 as a judgment of his importance, rather than a boundary on my responsibility. He stood and walked to the other end of the room. I thought you'd step in if it went wrong. There it was. Not the capital call, not the lender, not Vanessa, the oldest liability in the room. I closed Ruth's ledger. That was the debt I had been carrying longest. Miles turned back. What are you talking about? Not Harbor Ridge. Your belief that every consequence in your life eventually became mine. His expression hardened. So this was a lesson. No, you transferred a failing project to teach me responsibility. I transferred the project you demanded after warning you 3 times. You knew I couldn't fund it. Yes, and you still signed, so did you. Vanessa stepped between us. This is cruel. No, I said. Cruel would have been hiding the debt. You knew we would fail. I knew there was a serious risk. You had a plan to make Harbor Ridge work. I had cash reserves, experienced management, and the ability to wait. So you gave Miles an asset that only works for you. I gave Miles the asset he selected instead of the cash he rejected. She placed both hands on the table. You are willing to destroy your son to prove a point. No. I am refusing to destroy myself so he never has to learn one. Miles looked at me as though I had become someone else. Perhaps I had, for years. He knew me as the person who appeared after the worst decision and separated him from its cost. Ending that arrangement felt like betrayal, because rescue had become part of his definition of fatherhood. I did not enjoy removing it, but discomfort does not make a boundary wrong. I looked at my son. Every time your life showed a deficit, I moved it into my column. He sat down again. I thought I was helping you build stability. Instead, I taught you that a crisis was another way to reach my assets. That isn't fair. It is not entirely your fault. That surprised him. I wrote the checks. I guaranteed the loans. I purchased the equipment. I protected you from failures that might have taught you to stop before the next one. Vanessa folded her arms. So now you're punishing us for accepting help you offered. No, I am ending the pattern. Miles looked down at the pages. What happens if Harbor Ridge defaults? The lender may force a sale, take control through restructuring, or accept a new capital partner. And if we lose the equity, then you lose the equity. You really won't take it back? No. The word stayed between us. Final, not angry. Vanessa collected the files. As she reached the door, she turned. When Chloe learns what you did to her parents, she will never look at you the same way. Chloe is not collateral either. Her face tightened. They left. The capital deadline passed without the full contribution. Miles and Vanessa managed to raise $80,000 by selling 2 company vehicles and withdrawing personal savings. It was not enough. The lender did not immediately foreclose. Businesses rarely collapse according to the timing of a dramatic speech. Owen Park arranged a distressed recapitalization. A regional development group contributed the remaining funds, negotiated with contractors, and assumed operational control of Harbor Ridge. In exchange, Miles's ownership was diluted until he retained only a small minority interest. He did not lose everything. He lost the right to claim he owned $4.2 million. The new partner finished the essential construction, reduced the original design, and delayed 2 buildings. Harbor Ridge remained alive, but it no longer belonged to Miles in any meaningful sense. Carver Home Concepts also survived, barely. Miles closed 1 office, sold equipment, and reduced the number of active projects. Several employees found other work. The company stopped accepting renovations it could not finance. Vanessa lost credibility with the investors she had invited to the luncheon. Her presentation had advertised projected value as though it were present equity. She called it a misunderstanding. The investors called it poor disclosure. Their marriage became strained, though it did not end during those first 6 months. I did not ask Miles to report their private arguments to me. He began repaying certain suppliers instead of moving every dollar toward expansion. For the first time, his company became smaller on purpose. The estate changes remained in place. Miles was no longer executor. Any future benefit I might leave him would be managed through an independent discretionary trust. He could receive support. He could not pledge the trust to a lender, demand distributions for another business rescue, or use the estate as proof of future collateral. Chloe's education trust remained protected under an independent trustee. Her parents could not borrow from it. They could not redirect it to payroll. They could not describe it as temporary liquidity. I did not tell Chloe every detail of the dispute. She was not responsible for judging her parents, but she had witnessed enough to ask questions. The $50,000 Vanessa tore up was never reissued to Miles. I used that amount to establish the Ruth Carver Trades Scholarship. Ruth had always believed young builders should understand more than tools. The scholarship paid for apprenticeships and classes in contract reading, estimating, project cash flow, and basic accounting. Not glamorous subjects, necessary ones. Chloe helped review the program materials, but she did not control the money. The scholarship was not a message to punish her parents. It was a way to preserve what Ruth had spent her life teaching. Building something is not only the work people can see. It is also understanding what remains owed after the ribbon is cut. Months later, Chloe sat with me at the old dining table. Ruth's ledger lay open between us. On one page, I had drawn 2 columns, assets. Obligations. Chloe studied the Harbor Ridge figures. "Did you know they would lose the project?" she asked. "No, but you knew it might happen." "Yes. Why didn't you stop them?" I tried to make certain they understood. "That isn't what I asked." She sounded like Ruth. I closed the pen between my fingers. For most of Miles's life, I believed stopping him from falling was the same as helping him stand. Chloe waited. I was wrong. She looked down at the columns. "Do you regret transferring it?" I considered the question carefully. I regretted that Miles had asked. I regretted the torn check. I regretted every earlier rescue that made his final assumption feel reasonable. But regret does not always mean the decision should be reversed. "I regret that he believed my love required me to keep paying for every choice," I said. "I do not regret proving it did not." Chloe touched the projected value at the top of the page. "So the project was never really worth $4.2 million? It could become worth that. Then Vanessa wasn't completely wrong." "No." She looked surprised. "The number was not false," I said. "It was unfinished." I pointed to the liabilities. "These numbers were already waiting." Chloe nodded slowly. "Gross tells the story. And net tells the truth." I closed Ruth's ledger. Vanessa tore up $50,000 because it looked small beside $4.2 million. She never understood that the first number was cash. The second was a projection. And the numbers on page 37 were obligations already waiting for an owner. I did not transfer a hidden debt to my son. I transferred an asset whose debt he had been warned about 3 times and chose not to see. Miles inherited the story he demanded. For the first time in his life, I let him pay for the truth.